Hello, folks. Welcome to Friday at Two Cultures, many chaps. What?
Many chaps. We had many chaps in these two cultures here. Friday, everybody. TGI. No, I'm not endorsing that brand. But for some, it may be great that it is Friday. For others, the day of the week does not matter, because in times of working from home, we might just continue doing whatever we do through the weekend. However, if it is a day for you, I would say Shabbat Shalom and happy Friday to the rest of us.
Absolutely. Fantastic. How are you, mate?
I am in a mood.
Good.
How about yourself?
You're always in a good mood. I mean, it's always good to be in a good mood. Get up, energy. We've been talking about energy this week. It's been fantastic. But it's Friday. And a little kind of a bit of a pop-up episode with just us two. But we are going to talk about something that Christian has a particular field of expertise in. And it came out of a discussion or something I heard earlier this week about how an executive it was pointed out to him that his facial features were influencing the way that the people in meetings were responding to him. And this is a guy with he's got a very good brand. When you see him on pictures, he's smiling. He's got this, he's very welcoming in his image, but apparently when he's listening intently, his coach said, "Do you realize the face you make?" And he said, "No, I don't." And he said, "Actually, it looks like you're angry. You mad, bro?" Right? And she was observing that the people in the team often responded to that by being quite intimidated, and therefore he, as a very open person, he was finding it hard to get feedback. He was finding it hard to get ideas because of just basically his poor face. Now you can't do anything about your face, right? This is the one we're born with, right?
Well, I've seen people who do something about their faces. I'm not sure if it actually helps them, but
yeah. Well, I think it just, and it brought to mind how much we talk about this across cultures. The sense of even eye contact and expressions on faces, how we might express ourselves, our feelings, our meanings, our intent through the way that we do it. And then that in some cultures that's quite easy to do, and it's quite easy to read, right? Yeah. But in other cultures, but possibly not. So I guess for today I had the particular interest, so I wanted to bring this to Christian because and just kind of give us walk us through, I guess, in a short period of time, in the time we've got here and today, is to just try and unpack that a little bit.
This is hilarious because as we prepped for this, I said I could talk about this for hours. So he's already framing it for me. Be brave, Mike. Don't go down chasing different holes.
It's Friday. I may or may not have it's Friday, almost Friday afternoon. I may or may not have a cocktail ready. So
Right. All right. Water it is for now. So I think this topic of, let's say, non-verbal communication or feature or body language, however you want to group this topic, I think this is a real tricky one, because I don't know how people are taught in different cultures around the world, but the way that I was brought up in the quote-unquote Western educational context, Europe and North America, there is this assumption apparently that body language is universal, and that facial expressions or nonverbal cues trend languages. And I don't know when this began, when this their truth, because over the course of my career in my life, I've learned that nothing could be further from the truth. I heard about people saying, well, when you sit with your arms across, like this pose, I have to scoot back and see this, like this pose, it means that you're closed off and that you're not ready to receive, and that you might even be rejecting what is presented to you. I find that to be nonsense, because I find myself sitting like this quite a bit, especially when I listen intently, like the gentleman that you were referring to earlier, and what others interpreted on his face as a mad or as an angry look may just be his very focused concentration look, right? So what we make body language, or what we make nonverbal language mean, is subject to our own experience, and oftentimes culture plays a role in this. So we do a lot, my wife and I, we do a lot of communication training, not just cross cultures, also within cultural groups, especially here in North America. And there is this that we have this phrase or this axiom in our teaching, that is, nothing has meaning except the meaning you choose to give the experience. So if you want to make that person's facial expression mean anger, then that's your choice. Nobody told you to do that, right? So to be aware, it's the person telling you with their facial expression, I am mad, it make it mean mad. And once you become aware that much of the experience in life you have is based on your judgment and not about the real life, right? So you know this quote by Anais Nin, many cross-cultural trainers use: we don't see the world as it is, we see the world as we are. That's exactly what's going on, right? We see it through our lens and not in a neutral, objective way. And one might argue, is there even objectiveness in that kind of observation? So I found that my facial features, or the way I express myself non-verbally, did not work very well in the United States initially, because in my native culture of Germany, being face with lots of smiles and showing the pearly whites, having the corners of my mouth up, and maybe my eyes opening up wide, and maybe supporting this with body language that is openness and excitement, however I'm trying to model here right now, that is something of a nonverbal behavior in my culture isn't necessarily endorsed, or there's no incentive to do so. So how emotionally expressive we communicate may very well be a function of our upbringing, a function of our culture, and then if we give meaning to that based on our own experience, then we fall into the trap of being a wrong interpreter of our experience. I mean, you have stories about the spread. I mean, you are an Anglo culture. You in your culture, it was, or it is, appropriate to be open, to be smiling, to be to go up to people and express your joy of meeting them. And then the first time you went to Poland to meet your wife's family, that worked out.
Yeah, well, it even had an influence on how, because I wanted to take photos. I wanted to capture these wonderful moments of meeting my intended in-laws, and getting everybody together in a group and asking them to smile, just because that's what I'm used to. Get in front of a camera, everybody, put on your wonderful faces, because I've been with these people. They had accepted, they had really drawn me in. I mean, I already knew that. I had a sense that the Polish style was not immediately open like that, because I'd experienced it. Even introducing Marta to other people, it's not her natural style to do, as you say, turn up the mouth and all that kind of stuff. But it really had an impact, my first trip to Poland, when I would bring the camera out, and I'd say to Marta, because I couldn't speak any of the language then, but I'd say, can you tell your family to smile? And she'd go, they are smiling. And I go, what? That's a smile?
Right. And
And I even look at photos. I was looking yesterday. I've got lots of photos of our daughter around the place, and there are some photos where I go, "Oh, that's her Polish day." That's her
yeah,
Polish.
and
Very.
when we're in stress, or when we are under pressure, or if we're not consciously aware of how we appear in the world, then we go back to our default settings, right, to our factory settings.
Yeah, yeah.
That is true for our verbal communication. That, I think, is also true for our nonverbal. And poor fellow, I don't know what organization or what type of industry he's in, if his team thinks that his type of facial features are a sign of anger, or in what's the word, discontentment, then he may have to explain himself. But it's great that somebody's making him aware of it. So unless you
Yeah.
know how your nonverbals are resonating with your environment, that it's hard to address that, because it's outside of your conscious awareness.
Well, he was the CEO of the organization. Like back in a past life, he tells his story often, and he was the CEO, a book publisher. But he had a lot of people around him, and when you were saying before also about interpreting through our own lens what the meaning was, unfortunately, the coach kind of then, after questioning a few of the executive team, said it became a topic around the water cooler of this yellow face. So often you can imagine that a new person coming into that environment already came from a position of disadvantage because they were already prepared and had heard the stories about, we just don't know how Michael is at this time, because he's always seems to be very scared, and you'll notice that. So that you can project that expectation on other people. So
Right.
these kind of a self, it self-limits itself. Yeah.
Well, and expectations, I hate to bring out another axiom of our communication classes. Expectations are often premeditated resentments. So if you hold on to your expectations and they're not fulfilled, at some point you're going to get mad, either at the other person, or at yourself, or at a whole group of people. So always be careful as to what you expect of communication. I think it's not just the facial expressions; it's also other nonverbal cues. I'm known in my family, somewhat notorious, that if I am not satisfied with how some chores around the house were done in my absence, that I would make a sound that is like this. Like, when people hear that when my family hears it, oh gosh, Dad found something, that a dishwasher wasn't loaded properly, or whatever his nerd mind is going to next. So it's not just the facial features; it's other clues, right? And I want to bring up a little illustration that may shed some light on this, because it is a model that's been around for many years. It's called the Moravian formula, the Moravian model, named after Albert Moravian, a psychologist who found that in our communication we have three major elements that make up meaning, and meaning is made up through words that we use and choose, whether we say them or whether we write them, and then the tonality of our voice as we deliver these words, and our body language, all of our nonverbal communication, right? And you see here that pie chart with the percentages. These are the percentages that apply to our stress situations, when we have some kind of pressure on us. That's when we go back to default. And at that moment, the word base, the choice of language, is only 7% of the meaning that we generate. The way we say it, whether we whisper it softly or whether we scream it at each other, that totally changed meaning, right? My body language, you could see, whisper, my shoulders droop, and when I scream, then my hands go up and my shoulders go back. So that creates this part of the meaning making, right? So the words in and by themselves, yes, they have meaning. However, in situations of pressure, of stress, the word base is almost negligible. Now, imagine this to be a communication via email or instant messenger, and you're working with your team and you're expressing your frustration because there is a stress moment, and the only tool you have at your disposal are the words you type. There is no body language, there is no tone of voice. So the recipient of your message fills in that blank. And how do they do that? They fill that in based on previous experience of talking with you, because they remember, oh, he always looks angry. So now I read this email and I imagine the angry look on that person's face, and I jump to the conclusion he must have typed this in anger again. However, we don't know that. And we don't know in the first place whether that face meant anger. So their communication is...
Just a point on that, because remember the other day when we talked to Kyle Hegarty, and you said, because I haven't really read all of his book, and you said, now you've heard Kyle speak, you will read that book in his voice. And I've done that with people that I know. We do it with people like Seth Godin. I'll do it. I will read something they've written and imagine that I'm talking in their voice. You know, Morgan Freeman has this effect on us. Everybody says, you know, there's all those memes that come out and says, you know, Morgan Freeman said this, and by the way, you just said it the same way as he did in your mind.
Which means basically God spoke to you, because Morgan Freeman is the voice of God in the United States.
Voice, right? Yeah.
So tone of voice carries a lot of meaning, right? And this, maybe I'm a bit, I don't want to say privileged, but I had a glimpse into this early on in my life, because in Germany we consume a lot of movie and television productions made in the United States. However, we don't consume it in the original language. There's a whole industry in Germany of voice actors that overdub the English actors with German language. So there's no subtitles. You watch the same images, the same film or the same show, and you hear German voices over the actual actors. And
do they use, can I ask a question on that? Do they use the same voice for all of the dialogue?
No, they use different voice actors for different characters.
But in Poland, there is this tendency to dub a lot of the Western English-speaking content with one monotone guy who speaks like this, and so
narrates it in a Polish style, I guess.
Yeah, I guess he's trying to do it, but it's even when there's a kind of an emotional scene, but you've got this very monotone guy speaking and dubbing it. Anyway, an aside, but it's just kind of it throws me off in terms of, it distracts me from the excitement that's going on, right?
Exactly. And it is how meaning gets created. So let's say you have an actor like I don't know, give me Dustin Hoffman, right? Big actor. And his German voice will be throughout his career, unless something happens to the German voice, which has happened before. So the German voice actor for a big A-lister actor suddenly dies, and they have to replace him or her. And all of a sudden, that actor sounds different in all the movies going forward. That's when people recognize, oh, wait a second, that actor sounded different. So that's how I got introduced to the tone of voice, to the meaning side of the choice of words, right? I remember as close to where I grew up was a U.S. Army base, and the movie theater in that town had one day that was a G day where they showed U.S. movies for members of the U.S. military families, and they typically the same time those films were in the U.S., which meant months before the German overdubbed version would be released for German audiences, for general admission, so to say. So my job, or my challenge as a teenager, was to get into the GI Night feature, and A, see the movie in its original, and B, see it before everybody else. That was challenges as a teenager, right? So I remember we were watching some mediocre Schwarzenegger movie, and we were so excited that we were able to get in. I mean, I didn't have U.S. military identification. You know somebody. There was always a way to finagle the system. So we walked in there and we were laughing asses off because for the first time we heard Arnold Schwarzenegger in his own voice speaking English as a back then loud actor, and in his strong, very thick Austrian accent. And this was a serious action movie, right? Which with suspense and explosions and killing. Every time Arnold said something, my German friends and I, we would just roll on the floor laughing, like, this is hilarious. How this guy sounds. This is incredible. This is so stupid. And all American teenagers around are like, shut up. We're trying to, what's going on here? This ain't funny. And we're like, yes, it is. You have no idea. So this is when I recognized that.
Gravitas, isn't it? That's part of Arnold's gravitas in the English speaking world, is that voice, but he talks like this. You know,
yes,
that's scary. You know, shit's about to go down when stuff happens, you know, when he's talking like that. And you're rolling around laughing. I can just imagine what that does to other people.
Well, because you watch a Schwarzenegger movie in the German overdubbed version, there is no hilarity about his voice. He sounds like a regular guy speaking regular language. It takes completely away from his character. So once I noticed there is so much more nuance to language than just the words. There's so much more meaning making that happens outside of the words. I started delving into this with more depth, and that includes not just voice. It also includes, as you saw on that pie chart, it includes very much our body language. I will never forget the first time I interacted with a client from Argentina. And I knew it, right? I was prepared for this. I read up, I studied cultural intelligence, I studied up on Argentinian culture, and I was prepared that in Argentina, people have a different approach and a different expectation in terms of physical distance. And this was pre-corona time. So I knew that Argentinians will stand close. And sure enough, guys, really close. I mean, close enough so he could smell my breath because I could smell his. And I thought, okay, this is actually true. This is not just a stereotype. This just, in this case, it's proving to be correct. So I took it to the test and I just gently tiptoed away from him, very nonchalantly. And sure enough, he kept following me. He kept closing that spatial gap. That's when I recognized, okay, this is normal body language for Argentinians. And it may be totally off-putting for people in the US or in other parts of the world where an arm's length of distance is the expectation, right? So all of these are part of our meaning making. And I confronted the Argentinian fellow at the end of the day and said, hey, I wanted to point this out to you because now you're going to work in the United States and this is body language. You like to stand very close, and I have no issue with that, but you will run into Americans that will feel out of place or that will feel uncomfortable about this.
They'll be tripping over the trash can as they backpedal, right?
Right. He said, but I just wanted to show that I trust you and that I get along well with you. I said, yes, I understand, and not everybody else will. So the CEO that you talked about, his face may mean, hey, I'm listening to all of you with deep intent and with very attentive listening skills, and I'm so ready for you to give me your best ideas because I'm focused.
In fact, that's exactly what was happening. He is all the content he puts out. You know, he talks a lot about that. Really, as a leader, he's a leadership. Now his brand is leadership, and he talks about that. Is that what he learned the best from the people around him, listening intently, really focusing on their words, really, you know. So of course that kind of imbued that, and I've seen that face, you know, that he makes, and it's kind of, and I thought, yeah, if I sat in that room with him and he made that face, I'd go, dude, really? What you know, what are you so angry about? Like you said, you're mad, bro.
And sometimes these that can often be completely misconstrued. Picture after he left office, George W. Bush, former U.S. president, I think he was 43, and there was a picture of him with a leader from the Middle East. Maybe it was a Saudi or Emirati leader. I forget was. And you see in this picture, it was not staged. You could actually see this was a capture from a scene that happened at maybe Camp David or some site where W. Bush and this Arab leader were walking holding hands. And I noticed that, and I was like, it's interesting, especially for a president that is viewed as fairly conservative. And in the United States, conservatism also meant that conservatives were not really in favor of LGBTQ plus rights. So this could easily be misconstrued as a romantic two men holding hand. And well, how does that work, right? So hand holding in many cultural contexts means I am you, and maybe I am in a physical relationship with you. And in the end, it can mean that especially between senior leaders, it is a sign of trust. So they were walking hand in hand, and Bush was culturally smart enough, or he was briefed enough to understand that this is a behavior to engage with, reject, which probably all of his fibers were rejecting to do that. However, he was enough not to do that. And it showed a deep sign of respect towards that Arab leader that was having a summit with, right? So often these simple nonverbal communication cues have different in different cultures, and knowing how to apply them and interpret them, it takes some practice, and it also takes some guidance. It just doesn't happen overnight. That's why Brett and I have a job. That's why we work with our clients, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's the fun of it. All right, it's that knowledge never ends, and I've certainly made my fair share of mistakes in that realm, and then gone, I probably need to go back and learn that, or ask somebody that knows, and so that's where we get our knowledge from. Well, I guess that's about the week, my friend. What do you say?
Well, I'm gonna hop off to teach another NLP class, so that's what we teach, by the way. So we say NLP. Not everybody knows what that means. It's neuristic programming. So we teach these things, right? This body language, tone of voice, word choice, what type of words are we using? Because all of that are basically indicators as to create our mental map of the world. And as you learn how to read people, as you learn how to interpret their messaging via words, tonality, and language, you get a better idea of how this individual shaping their model of the world, shaping their thought processes, and how they go about solving problems. And as you do that, as you learn for human communication, it's easier for you to build rapport and build trust with these people, right? Or not these people, but with anyone, because I'm very convinced. I'm a staunch believer in the fact that everything is communication, and without efficient, clean, nonviolent communication, you don't get a deal. And that's what we teach in our class. So we got this week we got a 2-week practitioner course, doing it virtual. So today is 10. I'm excited to go into that. So if you want to check that out, you see the website here, NLP Atlanta. Shoot me a note. We'll figure out how we can do that for you.
That'd be fantastic. And the other just final thing on that, I know that you always say, and it's a key thing in the message with the NLP, is that this is something you don't use for evil purposes. Right? We're not talking about. We're talking about deploying this in a productive and an intentional way, so that you can open up communication and make it enriching and a win-win for both people. Because you get many practitioners in types of body language, people who want to teach you body language, and they say you've got this secret power you can use against people. That's one thing that that's the wrong way to go. I mean, it's the wrong way to go about things in anything, but it just kind of really gets me. And I know that I know just a personal thing, and I know Christian and Brigitte personally, and I know that's a constant theme, is that this is meant to set up a win-win for both you and the people you're interacting with. Yeah.
thank you for pointing it out, and it brings to attention that there's often these snake oil salespeople who think that whether it's across cultures or within cultures, that there is a communicative secret box of tricks, mind tricks that you can use, and then once you have those, then you will win the deal and you'll manipulate and hypnotize people into doing what you want. I'm not saying that there are people who hypnotize others to gain something from them without consent. I've met like that. And that's the lowest form of human existence, ask me. But there is no snake oil that will do the trick that some people is. What efficient and clean communication training does is open your eyes to the human mind and to humanity, and it allows us to connect better. And that's, I think, you know this, Brett, and I share this on our website. This is my mission, is to create peace through human connection across cultures, across any type of interpersonal difference. And if your goal is to create more for everybody, if your goal isn't to create abundance, if your goal is to benefit only for yourself, then I want nothing to do with you.
Good.
My word for Friday.
Look at that. Drop the mic. And just one final thing, of course, we do. Christian says create, right? Create is what we're doing here. And one of the things we do is we both have a YouTube channel, both separately, Christian and I. So if we could hypnotize you into actually coming and subscribing, we wouldn't even do that. We're just asking you. With you, we're being nice. We're asking you to come and subscribe to both our channels, and you'll find out more information about what we do separately, and of course more fun what we do together, because this is great. I mean, we're 30 episodes. This is 30th episode. 30.
Crazy. And here's a language pattern that I would use. It's somewhat hypnotic, and it's a question and not a command. And this is what we teach in NLP. It's an embedded command. When would now be a good time to subscribe to our YouTube channels?
Right.
There we go. When would now be a good time?
When would be a good time? What exactly are you waiting for?
Yeah. How about now? I mean,
you
could do it right now, or you can wait until the end of this video. It's up to you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Speaking about the end of the video, we're at the end of the video. See you next week, dude. And have a great weekend, everybody. And if you're watching the replay, whatever day it is, you could be watching this on a Monday, so that means nothing. So I don't know. I guess
happy Monday then.
Have a great next day. I don't know. All right, guys. See you later. Have a good one.